Hello, hello, Joy. Welcome to the Writing Room podcast. How are you?
Hello, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm well, thank you. I'm well, Isabel, thank you.
Good.
Yes.
You do look very well. I love your scarf. Is it a scarf?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, a multi-purpose scarf.
Yes. So my guest today is Joy Coutts, and she is an author, an editor, and a proofreader. And she wrote and self-published her first book called A Missing Mother in 2021. And this is what we're going to talk about today. She lives in the northeast of England, near Durham, and she loves going into the sea, do some sea dipping. Is it every day you do that?
In my perfect world life, yes, it would be every day, but until I achieve that, then nearly as often as I can. Yes.
Even right now, when it's like
even
minus.
in the winter, yes. Even at sea temperature of about 5 degrees at the moment. Pretty chilly.
Yes, I tried 8 degrees in the lake. I think you know that 8 degrees in the lake the other day, and yes, that was just too cold already. So 5. This is the book that we're going to talk about. I love showing the book because for those who are watching this on YouTube, this is the book cover, which is so gorgeous. In fact, let's talk about the book cover. Tell me more about this person who did this beautiful cover.
I could talk about this cover all day long because I was actually, and still am, a little bit in love with it. The spine, and I love the spine in the back. But, yes, a gentleman in Northumberland, Dennis Sisterson, took this rough sketch, and I'm not an artist at all, sketch of this picture on the front cover that I had in my mind of a little girl just wondering who her mother had been, who she believed she was, and then this story unravels that she wasn't quite the woman that she thought she was, and sets her off on a journey of discovery. But we because it's set in between 1943 and 2000, we opted for this telegram font, which was fitted in well with parts of the story as well, and it all just came together. He created some magic.
He really did. I remember when I first saw it, I was like, oh my God, it's so perfect. And it wasn't quite there yet. I seem to remember there were a few details that you wanted to change, but it already felt perfect to me. And the subtitle of your book is A Story of Childhood Loss. And yes, it's hinting at it already on the cover. So
yes,
it really is perfect to me. Let's talk about your creative process. This is what I always love, and I've always been so curious about when when I talk to all writers, and when I think about all writers and authors in this world, from Balzac to to you. So I love to know. I have to find out when you write, whether you have a routine, where you write, and how you write. Like, is it with a pen and paper, or is it on your computer? Is it in a Word document? Is it in a Google Doc? Like, I love all the details. So tell me more.
Well, that's probably the answer to that question, Isabel, is probably split into two. Because when I wrote A Missing Mother, it was really quite sort of ad hoc. When I began it, I was working in a corporate merchant banking, so I was writing little bits in hotels of an evening, jotting ideas and things like that. In a writing group as well, so I was writing sections there, but it was very ad hoc, I'd say. no structure really to it, and it was purely for pleasure. And my only ever intention was to create one copy for me. That was my only ever intention for it as well. But then it took on a life of its own. And then it was written on a laptop, mainly, you know, into a Word document. And being a bit of a perfectionist, well, a lot of a perfectionist, I was correcting as I was going along and going, no, that doesn't sound quite right. That's not the feel I was looking for. So I was sort of self-editing as I was going along, and that's sort of the one thing you shouldn't do if you're going to write fiction and
Yes.
a novel. You just need to put it all down there. And
lesson number one.
lesson learned. And originally I had thought it was only going to be around 30 I got to about 30,000 words, and I ran out of steam, and it was going to be a novella. And my writing tutor, John Seymour, right now, he looked at it for me. I asked him to look at it, and he said that this is a really good basis for a novel and areas I should look at to grow it out and grow the characters, that make them three-dimensional, four-dimensional, that they're real people that you want to spend some time with. And I took those suggestions, and then my imagination just, I think,
carried on and on and on.
Ran right from there, that these characters worked and the story worked, but it needed more depth. It needed the layers of adding and to weaving the story together.
So how many words did you end up with?
I ended up with just, what was it? Around 71,000.
Wow.
But the published book, I think, is around 69. I took some bits out there I thought didn't have any purpose. Yeah, writing fiction, sort of even long fiction for a novel, you have got a lot of space and perhaps time, but it still has to serve a purpose.
Yes.
You know, putting stuff in that is just filling and padding things out. Readers can see that.
Yes.
I don't want to treat my readers with any kind of disrespect, so, you know, credit them with some.
You did that beautifully. I don't think there was anything extra. If anything, I was like, what? No, she's got to spend longer in France. I want her to spend longer in France. I wanted more to happen there. So,
considering I've never visited France, thank you. That's a compliment.
You've never been to France? Oh, wow.
No.
Well, I mean, so we're going to talk about the research in a little while, but I wanted to say that you hinted at it, that you were in a corporate job at the time that you started writing it. I didn't know that, actually. I didn't know you had started already writing in, you know, bits and pieces here and there in your hotel room. And actually, you're the main, well, is it the main character? One of the characters, I'm not sure who you consider is the main character, so one of the characters has your life, hasn't she? She
does, yes.
Your life at the time. So tell us more. Where were you working in corporate, and why did you leave your job in January 2020, and why was it the best decision of your life?
Yes, Marianne is me in parts. Parts of it are completely fiction. Parts of it, people who do know me are going, Joy, you actually say that. Joy, I know you actually did that, and that happened to you.
Yes.
At the time I was working for a FTSE 250 merchant bank. Report writing every day, but it's very cold and clinical, numbers driven. And I did it for a long time. Tiring, it's high pressure. but my first love's always been words. Reading, escaping into books as a child, which the Marianne character does. That's sort of, discovering the world through books, which I did. That was my escape. Certainly after losing my mother very young. And I just became disheartened and disillusioned with that world, very numbers driven, purely profit driven. And I wanted to work with words, not getting any younger. And I just thought, you know, if I don't have a go, if I don't try, have a go at it, I'll never know. So retrained at the same time, again in work hotels, studying to be a proofreader and copy editor with the Chartered Institute, and decided I would take the plunge and be brave and go self-employed. So that was at January 2020. But who was to know by March 2020 the world would change with COVID? The projects I had lined up at the time just evaporated, the world changed, and didn't come back really. But it did give me that time to go, right, I've got this this thing that I'm creating.
I've got time now, let's do it.
So, you know, so clouds and silver linings, and you know, be careful what you wish for sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, it's your fault, Joy.
All that happened so I could write this book. Or the universe delivered, whatever. So setting up, you know, a fledgling business and that as well, and that's how we met. Wasn't it?
Just before, yeah.
Initially, with some business mentoring, which really helped, and then it was one of my yoga teachers had mentioned a book doula, you know, and had mentioned to her about writing and how we connected, and it went from there really.
Yeah, and on and on and on. And look, 2 years on, it's nearly to the day, isn't it? Wasn't it the 27th or 28th or something like that?
Yes, it was right at the end of January.
Two years ago.
But sort of the other part of the answer to that question, that writing in a circle of women for me was a game changer. That energy that it contained, and it was quite. I wrote quite prolifically at times in some of those sessions and ideas, but I don't believe that would have happened by myself. I think that connection with other women, and having those regular time slots that we were having, that were marked for that.
Yes.
And that was, I think, probably the first steps on the road to having any kind of discipline about it. And then as that progressed, slowly at different rates. And then last year, January 2021, it's been hanging around a bit. And I thought, you know what, if I need to get serious if I'm going to finish this book. So I've been a bit under the weather as well. So a few lifestyle changes, and I stopped drinking. not that I was.
I didn't know.
But like many of us through the lockdowns, you know, too regularly, too often at home was becoming, you know, 2 glasses every night or whatever, and that brain fog, that all of that around. So I just took that out, and that was part of I think, clearing my head to actually get serious. And and get it finished.
Wow, I didn't know that. Yeah,
Yeah.
so many people. I mean, I don't drink anyway. I've never
No,
drunk.
I don't. I don't either now.
Oh. So,
Yeah.
but a lot of people say that it does, like, yeah, it doesn't feel right. You're not clear-headed,
No.
and so yeah, it can definitely prevent you from writing, prevent the creative process from happening, or from
Yes.
happening as smoothly as it could or should.
And it was Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, which I think one of the ladies, one of our, when we used to write together, recommended, and I bought that, and that really spoke to me. And she says that about sort out the obstacle, that's, move the obstacle from your path that's preventing you create whatever art it is you're trying to create. And she goes through it, and she says, knock the alcohol on the head if necessary.
I've read it, and I think I was the one recommending it probably, and I've used maybe a passage or two out of it, but I didn't remember that she said that. But yeah, I've read it many times and heard of it.
Or a relationship, or saying that you haven't got a space.
I was going to say just the space. So we talked about this fairly recently, actually, didn't we?
We did.
About like, well, what are you going to do about your space? And I don't think I told you that, but as I was explaining to you the benefits, I was like, yeah, so maybe, you know what, that's what I want to do too. It's always the case that you teach what you want. Yeah, you teach what you need to learn as well, or like be reminded of. And I was like, okay, tomorrow, so I don't remember, but the next day, like, everything was clear. So tell me more. You had it was already kind of separate, wasn't it? Because you had your editing work as well as your other work.
It sort of was, with a hangover from corporate work, and there was just sort of stuff everywhere, and it was just starting to feel a bit oppressive and not conducive to being a settled space of having things around me that inspire me, which I have now. So I had a complete clear out and shifted from, because my life had changed as well. It was no longer an office. It is now my writing space. It is purposely surrounded by things that I love, that mean something to me, rather than corporate reports.
Yes. I can see behind you is only books, when it used to be folders.
Yes, all household files. That all lives somewhere else. This is my writing space. So that works for me. It needs to feel calm and clear.
Yes.
Yeah.
And private.
Yes. Shut the door.
Shut the door. Shut the door. Yes. So normally I don't. Sorry, was there anything else? Oh, the routine. Yes. Is there, like, did you come then after you'd cleared the space, and like set it all up as a writing space? Did you feel that then it was easier or harder? Because sometimes when we have a dedicated space, we're just like, I don't want to go in there. I want to have to write now. No,
it did actually, I think, clear some of the clutter as well in my head, so that to work on what I'm working on now, a few things. So yeah, it works. And now I think I feel like I have more structure. Try to pencil in and look at the days on the calendar and go, yes, I can, got that time, that afternoon, that morning. It does feel more structured, but I think the word is probably priority. I think structure's all well and good. You can have a to-do list by the minute, couldn't you? But
oh yeah,
I think that the difference has been putting it in my journal, my daily journal, as the priority. Yeah. The little short list of things I put in there that are a priority for the day, and writing is always one of those three. And that's been a big shift, making it accountable to me, making me accountable to myself.
And
Because
is it yeah, carry on.
Then when I look back at the previous day, I tick it off or not.
Or not.
But it sort of brings it more to the forefront. Yes. I think for me, priority is more important than the structure.
Yeah. And it can be, it's what I often say, is that it can just be, as long as it's at the forefront of your mind, not necessarily writing, but at the forefront of your mind, like, I am a writer. This is my priority. This is what I do first in the day, or maybe second, if there's something slightly more important. So is it the first thing you do, or is it just as long as you do it during the day, it's fine? Or does it vary?
As long as I do it sometime during the day, but mornings are productive for me, and early morning can be very productive as well. And I've also had a switch, because I really do like to write longhand. I always have done. So when I go to my writing classes with Newcastle Writers Group and Right Now, I often write longhand in those sessions, and online sessions. I find sometimes working on a laptop in a Word document is again a bit cold, and
it's true.
These people sort of just feel so flat, whereas if I write it, and I'll write different characters in different colours, or it makes them feel more alive. I mean, it's a trick that works for me. It might not work for others.
I can imagine. No, I can, yeah.
But writing different sections in colour, I find really useful. And the other thing is not to be too hung up on knowing, for me now, the thing I've learned as well, knowing that doesn't quite fit, or it doesn't quite fit with the plot, or the detail isn't quite right. It's just keeping a page where you just put that down of things I need to come back to later, rather than worrying about them now, trying to make them fit now. Keeping a page of things that I know are not, that will need to be looked at again, is a really useful, productive thing.
Yeah.
For my process.
Yeah, and I think to an extent, then pen and paper is useful in that way, because you can just like, oh, I'm just going to stop here and put that page in a separate folder somewhere else, and I can get back to it at some point. Whereas if it's in the middle of a Word document, I mean, yes, I use highlights, like, yellow highlights. This isn't quite right, come back to it later, but it can be distracting, and it can take a while to scroll through the whole document to find them.
Yes, to look it up, whereas I keep it on a couple of pages in my project book, ideas and things, and bits of research that I might have done, that scraps of paper, I chuck them all in there, so it's a self-contained sort of file of references or things I need to look at.
So I really like that trick with the different characters and different colors. So I don't actually support women with novels normally, but at the time we started working together, I hadn't specialized yet, and I was like open to whoever would want to come and work with me and work on their books. And also, when you told me the story, of course, it wasn't really just a novel, was it? It's based on not your real life, but based on what could have been in your real life, and at the same time based on your real life. So tell us more, because I'm just doing cryptic, talking cryptic now.
If you haven't read the book, that wouldn't make any sense.
Yeah. So let's summarize the book. Like, what's your one-liner elevator pitch, and then tell us a bit more about why you wrote it.
It is a story of a little girl who is around 5 years old, whose mother dies, and she grows up without her, and then much later in life, about 50 years later, she discovers a photograph that suggests that perhaps this woman isn't who she thought she was. And that theme, that story came out of me reaching 50, thinking, you know, my mother didn't only live to be half this age. And it was quite a thought, you know, quite an upsetting thought. And I thought, you know what, she could have been anything. In fact, was she? Had she had a life that nobody told me about? You know, she could have been invented parts of nuclear science or something like that. And then I got to thinking, oh, she could have been a spy. I had these different options of in my head of who this person was. And I felt that I never really knew her because no one spoke about her within quite a short space of time after she passed on. And as a little girl, I needed to know about her, but my family were all male, surrounded by male relations, and they didn't know how to probably speak to me about her. And that's where the title came from. She went missing. This woman went missing out of my life. And so when I started to formulate this idea, I'm thinking, this woman is going to have an amazingly courageous and bold and life, and I'm just it was purely created fictionally that she wasn't actually the character. She was born during the war, but she was just a baby. She didn't.
Yes, she wasn't old enough to be in the episode.
The mother character, that Valerie, is purely fictional, but based on historical facts and research, which is part of the process that I really love is the research.
So tell me more about the research then.
Oh,
where did you go? Did you actually, because you mentioned so in the novel, Marianne goes to the War Museum and the National Archives. Did you go there yourself? Did you do research there?
No.
No.
No. I researched them online. And did I ring up? I think I might. Yes, I think. No.
It just felt so real because I've been to the War Museum, and I also went to Kew. I also went to Kew Gardens as part of my research for my MA in. It was about the Indochina War, so like you have to go and see the actual archives and see for yourself what they look like, you know, as part of your research. So it felt like I was there, like, wow, so she must have gone there to these places.
Thank you. No, I haven't actually visited, not yet, although that is on the cards for my next project. Because I know records are held there about what I'm researching now. But for that research, it was mainly extensive reading of books, and just Dr. Google.
Google, of course.
A lot of Googling, but cross-checking, you know, not just accepting the first thing that comes up. A lot of cross-checking, especially on the Freedom Trail, the route across the Pyrenees that was the escape route, because that has been recreated. It is a memorial walk every year. And I thought, you know, I really owe it to those people, you know, who sacrificed their lives, you know, escorting all sorts of people to freedom across the Pyrenees. That has to be as factually correct as I could make it. So did a lot of research and contacted the Freedom Trail Association and it's just amazing if you're open-minded what you learn on the journey, the research journey.
So good, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and all around the Second World War, which has always interested me.
Yeah.
But later, sort of latterly, the role of women, how social change for women. Yeah, it was a big driver of women, you know, coming out of the home or moving into different types of work that had been traditionally, you know, done by men, but they weren't here to do it. You know, they were fighting on the front, and all of that.
So all the training, all the details about the training that Valerie did, you found out about that in the book that you read as well?
Yes, I read quite extensively on that, because records have been released from archives now and that they are available. But yeah, that the training, which was pretty grueling to you know, to be dropped into France.
As the reader, you can't help but like imagining yourself in your cozy little living room by the fire, and you're reading about this.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God. So brave. Those women were so brave, and I love your tribute to them at the end of the book. You know, that how much they paved the way for us. You know,
yes,
50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, now the 2000s, 2010s, 20s, and on and on and on. This is what they changed our lives. And
yes,
of course they were part of us winning the war. I mean whoever watches
the
this
Allies,
but the Allies, the Allies winning the war. And I'm French, of course, for those who don't know. So it was I didn't know that's what you were writing about for a long time, until you said, well, actually, some of it's going to be taking place in France. And oh, really? So I said to you, I want to share this with our listeners as well, because wow, I mean, I didn't expect that. So I finished the book 10 days ago, and then I had I'm trying to remember the sequence of events, actually. Oh yes, I was in a meditation, and I suddenly pictured myself in Nice, where I spent many holidays in my childhood, very happy memories there. I was in the corridor at my grandparents' flat, and by the phone, this old-fashioned dial black telephone, you know. I don't know exactly why that image came to mind, because I've hardly ever thought of that phone or that corridor for ever, really. It wasn't something that I was like spooked about or focused on or obsessed about. I don't know what it was, but what it meant to me was that, okay, something about my granddad, because I love my granddad so dearly. And then I made the connection with the war, because he was in the war and he was a resistant in France. And reading your book is like, oh my God, like I don't know anything of what he went through. And reading your book made me realize that even if he told us one little thing or a few things, it would have been probably a tenth or a hundredth of what he probably went through, because they just didn't want to talk about it, right?
Yes.
So I'm really curious about what we're finding out now, actually, about all the work that they did. And I really want to read more now, actually, more of the history books of the people in France specifically, obviously, because I'm French. But so that connection, I'm sure it was from reading your book. You know, it's like not knowing what your granddad did in the war, and yet he helped. You know, it's just like, oh, it's tragic. So thank you for writing so many details about it in the novel. You really brought everything to life, like the events, the background, you know, the historical background, the cruelty of the Nazis. There's no other way of saying it. I'm always like conscious of the language, but and the hardship for everybody involved, and then the courage of these people, like the freedom trail. Wow, I didn't even know about that, actually.
No, I think that now, and probably, younger generations, they think, oh, hello, and it's
Yes.
comical. But those characters are based on real people. They really are. It was the baker, the butcher, the cafe owner, and they were in danger every day. They were, especially in the parts of France that were occupied, and they were really resisting it in the only way they could without, taking up arms, and that sort of just disrupting things and sabotage, and that type of resistance, just making a nuisance of themselves, which doesn't sound as though it would be as life-threatening as it was, but for them, making a nuisance of themselves.
It was dangerous,
It was dangerous, and they were putting their lives on the line every day to help and assist the Allies. And it's remarkable, really. It is truly remarkable stories of everyday people. Probably your granddad, Isabel.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know any of it. I remember
find out. You need to find out.
Yes. I remember sitting down with him and my cousins, and we were like trying to write the story of his life, in brief. It's only like 20 pages. But we said, what about the war then? No, don't want to talk about that. Which was so unlike him, because he was very open-minded, very talkative, very eloquent, and it was like, bam, no. And that reminded me of that scene in my life. so frustrating.
When you told me that, when you messaged to say that that you'd written that, recorded with your cousins, that really touched me. In fact, it made me cry because I create the right scene in my book where it is Marianne with her cousins trying to find out if anyone knew about these other characters in the book, and what connection they were to her mother and the resistance. And as a fiction writer, you want to write a good story, and that's that has characters that are entertaining and real, and you want to spend some time with them, which doesn't sound like much, but it is actually a really big ask.
It is.
So when you said that, I think, well, that was a completely fictional, manufactured, thought up scene in the chateau, in our cousins.
Yes. And yet maybe it's in the collective unconscious.
But then you said it was a real, that event has actually happened for real. And that is such a heartwarming, satisfying thing when you write fiction, that it's real, it feels real, or it's believable, or it has happened, or it could happen. It's not too far-fetched.
It's definitely not too far-fetched. So what happened to your book, doula? No, and you didn't communicate. You didn't give me any details really about the book. You were just like, I'm writing. Yeah, I've done 10,000 words. Yeah, I'm carrying on. Oh my God. Yeah, I've done 40,000. I'm like, what? And then suddenly there's a book. You've got a book. Your baby was born. So let's talk about your baby.
It kept growing and gestating, and then for more than 9 months, and it was getting very painful.
And so what did you decide? Because let's talk now about the formatting, the editing, the proofreading, because, as most people will know listening to this, the writing is a big task, but it's nowhere near the end of the book writing process.
No. Well, I got the idea for the cover on the go with Lynn and Two Bears Creative wonderful lady she is. She sorted it all that. And Dennis created a picture from the dream and in my head, that sort of thing. And then I just presumed that to myself that I was going to publish it on Amazon. And then a couple of other people I know, the guys who were writers who are now friends of mine, were saying how little that Amazon actually pay authors for their creative works, you know, when you sell through that. And I thought, you know what, Mr. Bezos already has enough money. And so I'd looked around and researched some other options. So I went with Book Baby Bookstore, they're based in the States, because they offer all sorts of services, but print on demand, which is the same as Amazon. So you order it, they print it and ship it, and formatting and they format it into free books and paperback and print. And I just wanted someone else to do all of that. It's not
I don't blame you.
Yeah. And the one thing I learned from that was that you just need to overestimate on time. If you think it's going to take 2-3 weeks, it's going to take at least 6 or 7. Everything takes far much longer than so I think that from my original publishing dates of a copy for me, I think it was actually about nearly 8 months later. It was a long time of getting it all together. But because personally at that time as well, by the time I got a draft, like a draft that I was happy with as a story, I didn't have the funds to pay a copy editor or a proofreader. I just didn't. It was a limited budget on it. I can't keep spending money. Gosh. Yeah.
Got to stop at some point.
The accumulator. Yes. Coming out in me. And so I did it myself, which was absolutely the wrong thing to do with hindsight.
No, you do need to do it yourself as well, and then you send it to. Yeah.
Yes, but really, you do need to engage a professional to do some of that work for you.
Yeah,
so you can afford
I just want to point out that you are an editor and you are a proofreader, and I am an editor and I am a proofreader. Yes. And even though we are editors and proofreaders, we still need external eyes and external professional services.
Yes.
We can't see everything. And for the editing stage, which is like the broader picture, the wider picture of the book, we need definitely another pair of eyes and another brain to see things differently and tell us, well, that's a bit too long, like you spend too long on that and not long enough on that, for example. And for the details, it's more about, well, you spelled Saint-Giron here without a hyphen, but over there with a hyphen, so it needs a hyphen. So like review all the Saint-Giron, you do a search and replace, for example.
Yes,
it's just an example.
Absolutely.
So it's more about consistency and the little details, like, oh yeah,
yes,
the page isn't quite right. Like, it's also formatting. You need an eye for the formatting. So it takes time, it takes effort, it takes energy, it takes mental strength, it takes I want to say something else, but I can't remember now. And we don't, as the authors, we do not have the distance, and we don't have all of that energy and strength and to do it as well as everything else. So yeah. But
I absolutely agree. We are too close to our own baby. We need to actually go there, look after it for a while for me, and see what you think about my baby.
And then I'll have it back.
And then I'll take it back.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. So I knew at the point that I was going to publish it with Baby, and when they sent the first set of proofs back, and I did another edit then, and then I thought, I've only got a limited budget for corrections here, so I spent all of that, knowing that there were still some in there. But at that point, I was overdue. This baby just had to. It becomes so
push him
heavy.
out.
It's so heavy. I couldn't carry it any longer. I'd been pregnant so long with it. It just had to be born. And for me, that was a huge thing of like, will I actually click? Yeah, I approve. I had to do it. You know, it was all on an online account, and they're great, really, really helpful, really easy to use. And it was the evening I approved it was a huge thing for me, and quite a big shift in who I am. Releasing it, knowing it wasn't perfect. Letting it go and knowing
Yes.
that other people were going to read it and judge it, and B, knowing that there were still errors in it, probably that most readers wouldn't even spot, Isabel.
Yes.
But when I always spot them in others,
Yes.
you know, and you do, and you did,
yeah.
But it was.
You released your need for perfectionism, which is a big thing, and you agreed with yourself that done was better than perfect, and it had to be.
Yes,
done.
it was done. It had to go, knowing that it wasn't perfect, and that's a big. I've been a perfectionist all my life, and it has been really quite debilitating at times. You know, thinking that you have to really over-explain or just overdo things, and they've got to be. So it was the first step on I think a journey of self-discovery for me, letting that book into the world of you know, it doesn't need to be quite.
And it will never be perfect anyway. And even with a traditional publisher, I'm sure everybody's always noticed at least one spelling mistake in a traditionally published book. Always.
Exactly.
Very, very rare. And I have one example. I would have to reread the book to be sure, but there is one book, I think it's the only book that I've read that hasn't got any mistakes in it, and that's Donna Tartt's book called oh no, something history. I've forgotten. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Anyway.
What matters is that we all know there are always mistakes left.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't be perfect anyway.
So that was actually a really scary thing to release, knowing it was imperfect, but that's in inverted commas, the imperfect, because it was done, and I held a copy in my hand, and I've published a book.
And lots of people have read it already.
Yes, and then I just sort of
and enjoyed it.
They
were touched by it. That's what's important, right?
Yes, and reviews and feedback and messages were quite overwhelming. Early weeks and months, and I really couldn't absorb it all. It was, as time wore on, as the months have worn on, I think, I'm thinking, yeah, I've done that, I've created that, and this little one, it is growing, it is, you know, got
sticking a life on its own.
And touching other people, and you know, other people like me who lost a parent very young, and what that means for your childhood. People I know who I never knew that about them, who sought me out and said, oh, I cried at this, or I felt what you felt, I know what that feels like. And so whilst it's partly true story within fiction, it has touched other people, which I can only be very
absolutely
feel humble and grateful for, really.
they even refer to hang on, at the end, the childhood bereavement UK.org
yes, yeah.
charity, for UK childhood loss charity. So that's amazing. I didn't know about it, but then I guess I don't really have reason to know about it, but I do know about other things I don't have reason to know about. But so I think it's a lovely way of helping others. Like, if that was you, this is what you can do, because maybe people don't know that they can seek help.
Yes, they support families who, if one of the parents is died, they support the surviving partner, but they support the children, and that didn't exist when I was 5 in 1969. That did not exist. That sort of support and family support, and
that would have been helpful.
Yeah, it would have been very helpful.
Yes. Okay, so that is amazing. That breaking through that barrier of perfectionism, because how many authors, even people maybe who are listening now, are like, I can't possibly write a book, or have finished writing the book and I can't possibly now publish it. People are going to judge me. Exactly what you said. People judge me. People are going to say bad things about it or good things about it. But either way, it's going to be really uncomfortable. They're going to contact me and say, "Oh my God, no, you forgot about this," or because potentially historically, if it's not spot on, you'll have history.
Historians.
Expert, history historians who will say, no, it wasn't quite that day, it was the next day or whatever. They can be so picky as well. So just like proofreaders can be picky, like there's a comma missing there, an apostrophe in the wrong place, or an extra space there. The historian will also potentially pick on the historian. So these are the things that prevent people from writing, and these are the things that prevent people from publishing, let alone self-publishing their book. So do not take Joy as an example and just go, she did it, I can release my book no matter what, I'm just doing it. And it's your first book, and there's always the possibility of a second edition. You can have it proofread later. You can do the second edition, and there's another baby coming, isn't there? Tell us in 2 more minutes. what you're writing.
Yes, I'm expecting again another one. And out of that, I think it's make progress rather than perfectionism. It is sort of where I am now. So really trying to get this first draft of the next one, next novel together. I've got to set myself a deadline of April, which I know is a bit tight, but there we go. Another 40,000 words, but we'll get there. And it's in a similar, on the same theme of a young girl who loses her mum young. She's 9, and it's based on the true story of my mother-in-law, Olive, who's not with us now, and the amazing hardship and difficulty that she went through from being 9 to 16, and what she had to do to reunite her family. Her mother died, Jane. She was 35 at the time and left 6 children, and 4 of them were girls, and they were removed from the home because they were girls. Right. Which was of its time, it's sort of historic, and this was 1945, and the war was just, it hadn't ended, but she'd survived the war, but she didn't see peace. That was early 1945, and obviously by the summer the war had ended, but she didn't. And it's Olive's story of having to leave her home through no fault of her own. And it explores, again, childhood loss, of a parent and all of that, a young girl. I can relate to those years, 9 to 16.
Sure.
needing your mum and you haven't got one. But recent weeks I've recognised that the overarching theme, it's got a big theme of what is home? What is home? Is it a place? Is it a physical place? Is it a feeling? Is it an experience? Is it a building? The overall, what we think of as home is going to be run through it. And again, I'm really excited on researching as well.
I bet.
So there will be a trip to Kew because I know some of the records, the training scheme she was enrolled on, domestic training. She went away to work in service. It's all set in the northeast.
Oh, wow.
In the places in South Shields and Stocksfield.
At least you don't have too far to go.
No, I have actually interviewed someone who worked in the house that she was working in.
Oh, wow.
An amazing series of people who knew people who went, oh, I know the person who lives in that house. Now,
oh, wow, this is so exciting.
Very, very exciting research, and the actual scheme she trained under doesn't exist now, but it was set up at the end of the war to provide staff back to the big houses because many of them had left to work in factories, munitions and all of this on work on the land, but they didn't return to service.
Right.
Because they were paid better, obviously, in other jobs. And the upper classes wanted to just pick up and retain their previous lifestyles, and there was a shortage of staff for big houses. So she trained in that. So that's the fictional element about some of it. Some of it is factual, because she has a relative, a sister that is still alive, and have recorded all of her memories of what they went through together as children.
I'm so envious in a way. It's going to be a massive project, but really interesting.
But the interesting thing, Isabel, is that her own children are not aware of this story. They don't know what really, they just know she went away to train. She went away to work in service.
So you're going to tell them all about it?
Yes, they're not aware of this story. They don't know the detail of what she actually did, what she actually had to. So,
well, I'm looking forward to reading that one.
Yes.
So where can people find you if they want to know more? So first of all, where can they find your book? So Book Baby.
On Book Baby Bookshop. But that's if you want to bring it into the UK, it comes from printed in the States, bring it into the UK. It is quite expensive, I'll be honest, because of changes and Brexit happening as well. So important. When I priced it, it was never going to be that expensive.
Right.
But it is available on Amazon as well. And it is in stock on Amazon now. That's correct.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
and then your website and your social media.
I am the Joyful Jotter on Instagram, which is where I post mainly now, and then it goes across to Facebook. I'm also the Joyful Jotter on Facebook as well.
Yes.
And my website is prideandjoyeditorial.com.
Yes.
And that is being revamped. It is going to be a new version, a shiny new version.
Wow, I quite like the old version already, so I can't wait for the new version. So prideandjoyeditorial.com. Yes. Yeah.
.com, yes, which will incorporate more about my writing.
Right.
Because I'm also writing some little book of meditation reflections book to publish in the next couple of months as well.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
This is fabulous. Thank you so much. Is there just one little, like one writing tip that you would like to give to our listeners?
Oh, yes, there is. And I think I said it a few minutes ago. Always choose progress over perfection.
Yes. Yes.
Even if you're only writing 20 words a day, 25 words a day,
Yes.
it's 20 more on your top. Watch your numbers. They'll soon creep up.
Yes, for somebody who loves numbers as well as words. And as accumulators, we've hinted at that. I will put in the show note what that's about. It's about sacred money archetypes. We're both accumulators. And we love
progress.
details.
I think progress rather than perfection, and progress.
Yeah, and one way
Just keep going.
And keep thinking about the, sorry, I've asked you the question, but I'm thinking, I keep thinking about the end product. Like, I mean, that's how you make progress. Yeah.
Yeah. When you hold it in your hands,
you know you've made progress.
You know you've made. Yeah. That would be my tip. Progress over perfection.
A great tip. Totally agree. And what a great achievement, Joy. And it's been a joy to speak to you.
Joy, pleasure. Thank you.
I really appreciate what you've done for this book. It's a lot of work. I know it, and I can feel it. And at the same time, you've made it really easeful and so easy to read, and a pleasure to read. And like all the descriptions, and you've put people alive, and it's just like amazing. So highly recommend everybody read the book, and we look forward to the next one, Joy.
Oh, thank you. And can I just say that a genuine thank you, because you were part of that journey, Isabel. Yeah, with me and held my hand, birthed it.
I wiped your brow and I held your hand.
Yeah. It's been
it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure.
Glad you enjoyed it. Thank you. Thrilled.
Oh, thank you so much, Joy.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.